Fireside and Fairy Tale. Welcome back to those who have already been joining my channel, and a very good welcome to those who are new. And I hope today that you enjoy what I have to share with you. Today is Tuesday, March the 4th, 2025. And I have to say it's still quite chilly outside, but the daffodils are about to burst forth in my garden. And when that happens, I always feel that spring has finally arrived. So what do I have to show you this week? Well, I do have a finish. And this is Rose Hips and Ivy by Blackbird Designs. I did manage to call a halt on this for a while, in that it had been made for a drum, and I actually thought I was going to be changing one of the borders on the side, but in the end I didn't. So I had brought it in too close, so I had to take it all out and do it as the pattern had actually directed. Now I chose a different fabric, linen, to stitch with this, and this is a winter brew. There's some confusion over whether it's winter brew, R&R reproductions, or winter's brew, and in the shop label where I obtained it, it's named as winter brew, but in fact in the Blackbird Designs book where the chart is, it's winter's brew. So whatever, I'm sure it's the same linen. It's from Sewing Club, which is a marvelous book by Blackbird Designs because it's got so many wonderful charts. And this one is to be made into a drum. And certainly I know that Brenda and the serial starter, I think her name's Sandra, and also Nicole of Nicole's Needlework have produced, have stitched this chart, Rose, Hips and Ivy. I think if I were ever to do it again, I wouldn't choose winter brew. It's what is actually asked for, 36 count, and I did use all of the lovely recommended threads with it, but I felt that it wasn't quite bright enough, the actual final result. I felt that the roses didn't really come up as well as I would like them to have come up. I might be wrong there. What I do love about it is the baskets of roses. I think they're absolutely beautiful. They really are. And this doesn't look like too much work. In fact, there is quite a lot of work. There is a lot of work in Blackbird Designs, but then that's why we stitch. We stitch to enjoy, and maybe we finally manage to complete something, which is good. So I recommend that that is sort out. Now the next two are actually my own design, and my plan is I was designing my own and having my own charts. I may well go back to that in a more formal basis. I think I have one on my Etsy shop at the minute, but because I have a creative side, I find that no, I'm not so sure I want to follow this particular chart this way, which some of you will have noticed from the previous episodes. And I do have two that are my own design. One is still very much in the process of designing. Now, the first one was inspired by a photograph of a sampler that is being stitched by Brenda Holzman. And it's monochrome in that you just use one colour of thread, and that is the blue alphabet. I'm really enjoying doing this. And Brenda's plan and strategy is to simply use one strand every day, and I think that's a lovely idea. I think it's very relaxing. It's a beautiful colour to start the day, and one strand isn't onerous. Hopefully, if you haven't got children to rush off to school or give breakfast to, then maybe you can squeeze in some time. Though I know many people get up really early in order to do some stitching. We're very dedicated, aren't we? So this is Simply Shaker by the Gentle Art Freedom. That's 7037. And what was I using? Antique White, I think. Was I using Antique White for the, doesn't say, no, Winter Moon. Winter Moon, which is one of my absolute favourites in linens. This is 36 count, and I'm very pleased to say I've actually finished the top alphabet. That's the capital letters. And then I'm working on a design to go along the foot. I shall probably put in a lowercase alphabet, which is pretty traditional, and maybe a row of colours, of numbers, which again is traditional. I started by using the Broderie DMC French book of alphabets, but then diverged from there. And I think the A was from one of their alphabets, but then my creative urge took over, and I've actually not completely followed. You'll see there the Y is quite the Y is quite creative, quite curly. I love this bird, and the flowers there. Now this is an adaptation of an old Dutch sampler design. Just again, I'm slightly adapting it. I just like to make things my own, I suppose. If I did in future have anyone say, oh, I love that design, please could you produce it, I would certainly go about doing that, and it would be a PDF download that I would do. In that, shipping can be quite something, and also though I love getting the charts in the post, if you're wanting something immediate, there's nothing quite like a PDF download. So that is my blue alphabet. Have I been doing a thread every day? Almost, but actually my aim was to finish the rosehip and ivy, and towards, I know I wanted to finish it by the end of the month, the end of February, and so for the last few days I was stitching furiously simply on that one. So I think I might have dipped out on a few mornings with the blue alphabet. Now the next one again is my own design, and where I have used the computer in the past to design, and that's very useful. It's called Max Stitch, and it's great fun. It's pretty easy to get your head around. I think it's quite old now, but it was certainly new to me a few years ago, and I certainly started designing on the computer. But at the moment I've gone back to being more artistic, and I'm designing as I go. The thing about designing as you go is probably like going over the Niagara Falls in a barrel on a tightrope, something like that. You're not absolutely sure that it's finally going to work out at the end. So you're giving yourself a challenge. You're giving yourself a challenge, and if that is too much, that is awe-inspiring, then obviously you would get graph paper out and you'd be working from pencil and paper on graph paper, or indeed you would use a computer program. So I think I showed you this just a little while ago, and this is R&R Antique Cotton, 40 count. And this is my Easter sampler. And as we all know, Easter is later this year. It's towards the end of April, which gives us rather a longer, few more weeks from the beginning of the year up to Easter to actually managing to produce something. I love this. I chose it because it actually is a very yellowish linen, and I wanted it bright and crisp and spring-like in colour. The wording is from one of my favourite hymns, which is from the 23rd Psalm. This is the King of Love, my shepherd is. And you can see I'm choosing to use different coloured threads for the more important words, which I think is a sort of medieval idea, isn't it? So king is in a golden colour, and love I'm going to do in pink. And then I'm working with the idea of primroses for spring colour, spring flowers, and I'm making it quite a traditional feel in that I am having the border. I'm not sure I'm not sure about any of it. I do know one thing, I want some white primroses in there next, but where it's actually going in the end, I'm not absolutely sure. I'll certainly, the most I would do is one verse of the hymn, and I might just do one line of the hymn. So we'll see how this goes. I'm loving it just a little bit, but what I can't do is leave it too late, because suddenly you've got a week to go and it's Easter and you haven't completed it. So I do like to have an aim and complete. I'm one of these type of people who do it that way, but and that was actually my education. If you start something, finish it. And actually it was, if you start something, finish it, and don't start anything else until you finished it. And that's not where I am completely. But I don't like things hanging around too long. I like to just have that feeling of satisfaction that I'd actually got to the end of the road. The colours I'm using of thread for this are a mix, and in fact what I've done is to pick out quite a number, and then I'll possibly not use them all. I may even add to this. Whoops! I may even add to this. This is my Fireside and Fairy Tale box. I went through a complete bead stage where I beaded everything. All my embroidery had beads, and I do have a lovely bead collection, but this is a useful box. It's a soap box that I covered in satin and embroidered. Well, I embroidered first and then I covered it. So, as I say, my next colour of primrose is white, and I'm planning to use Classic Colour Works antique lace. And white is, some people would call it a colour, some people would say it was more of a tone, like black. Some people say, no, black and white aren't colours at all. But we're not going to fuss too much about that. White is actually really quite difficult as, we'll call it colour, to add for a number of reasons. It can jump out over all the other colours, or it can just be completely washed out, especially against linen. So we'll see how this goes, but I'm pretty sure it will work. I'll probably I've outlined the pink flower, made an outline certainly around that petal, and in fact the other petals, and I think I will outline this possibly in wood smoke. Love wood smoke, or maybe something slightly paler, just so that it will have the definition around the leaves for the white, so the white doesn't vanish into the linen. So there we are, wood smoke. I'm actually using wood smoke for the borders around the twigs, if you like, or the branches for the flowers. A whole variety here, and fragrant clover. That's Simply Shaker. I think I absolutely have to use that one, don't you? Absolutely. Pumpkin patch. I love pumpkin patch. Pumpkin patch. Pumpkin patch. I mean, this is one of the reasons we stitch, isn't it? Because they're so lovely. That is Sampler Threads, the Gentle Art. Pumpkin patch. Did I say clover? No, I said fragrant clover. Now this is clover, again by Sampler Threads. Just so delicate and beautiful. But of course, the thing about colours, and I possibly will use some DMC, we'll just see. That's DMC 725, and a nice bright yellow. Bright yellow. And this is the thing about Anchor and DMC threads. You can actually get rather more vibrant tones because they've not been dyed or double dyed, as these WIPS dye works, etc. have been, as far as I know. As far as I know, they take the DMC or the Anchor and they dye over them. So you're going to have a certain amount of dilution. And tarragon is another very, very useful. That's WIPS Dye Works Tarragon, very useful green. So having said that, with colours, of course, you can take an individual colour and say, well, that's wonderful, but it's you have to think of it in context, of course. You have to think about the linen itself, the backdrop, and then you have to think, what other colours is it going to marry up with? Will it sit nicely side by side with another colour? Will it be vanished? Will it overwhelm another colour? So there's a great deal of this art of sampler designing and working up your own, whereas relying on people like, oh well, there are a whole plethora of wonderful designers, aren't there? They've taken the time and really worked hard to get the right palette, to get the right mix of coloured threads. So that is the King of Love. Now let's just move on a little bit. Where are we now? Okay, so we're not quite at Blackbird yet, but we are at Shakespeare's Peddler, Kitten Stitcher Teresa Vanette. She is known for all these names, and I did talk about this sampler last week. I think I'd started it on 50 count. I think it was antique white. It was very, very bright white linen. And it was just too much. I felt it's quite a complicated sampler, and I thought it's just slightly too difficult, too much of a challenge. I do want to stitch this and I do want to complete it, and I just think going with 50 count is just too much of a challenge. So I waited and bought actually don't think I've got, do I have it here? Possibly. Is it? I know I've got this somewhere. I think it is, no, I have it here. In the meantime, there is the Anne Grant. It has sat in my drawer for about 3 years now, and I chose it because of the border as much as anything. I just love that border. I love it. It's slightly zany. It's just very active border, though the sampler itself is beautiful as well, and the verse is lovely. I like the tree. I like that tree. But it was the border that called to me. So Anne Grant, 1829, by Shakespeare's Peddler. And I went for a shop called Fobbles in the UK, and It's vintage 3009 of Edinburgh Zweigart linen, which is beautiful, and it's 36 count. So that we really are in, you know, pretty safe country, I think. Pretty safe when it comes to actually completing something. Well, let's see. I'm going to take my time over it. And also, it called for quite a few. Oh, that's the other thing. I'm using silk, which is quite unusual for me. I think this is the first real attempt with silk. There's mixed messages about silk. I do know Narissa is saying, just use DMC. I can quote her on that. Someone said to me, oh, don't use silk, it's so cruel. Do you know what they do to the silkworms? So that is, I suppose, a concern. If it upsets you about what they do with silkworms in order to obtain the silk, then I wouldn't advise silk. Anyway, I'm going with silk, and I had a number of them, and I was itching to start. However, I'm waiting for Gloriana Pecan, and that is coming from, I think it's coming from America. No, it's coming from the UK. That's West End Embroidery, and who do have a lovely selection of Gloriana. Gloriana isn't that easy to find, actually. And then the other one is coming from America, from 123 Stitch, and that is Potter's Clay, which looks like an amazing colour, and that is Silken Colours, the Thread Gatherer, and I couldn't find an outlet in the UK for that type of thread, except for eBay, and the shipping is, you know, you're paying £5 for the thread and £16 for the shipping, so don't think so. Anyway, I do think it's important, if somebody's gone to the trouble, which Teresa Vanette will have done, to match up the thread colours for the antique, then we should honour that. And so that's what I've done, and I am building up on some of the silks. Now I have enough silk. I love Camelot's Lady. It's absolutely beautiful pink. I have enough silk to do the border to begin with, and then gradually be adding the other ones. Now, can I lift this up? Yes, I can. That's as far as I've got with it so far. I'm loving this, absolutely loving it. And I just did that yesterday. So just a start. It's the second start. I started again, as you know, before. And this is the second start. It's big, which was another reason that I was just waiting to get a fabric that I was happy with. And I'm trying this out on my hoop stand, which I use for ordinary embroidery, and I'll just see how we go with this tilting stand. And it's good for sitting up in a chair so that you get the right height for it. And it's just, can you see it there? Maybe you can't. And there's people say they can't see too low in this camera, but so that's something new, and we'll just see how we go with that. I know a great many people like lap stands. I don't have a lap stand. I'm normally working with a hoop in hand, and that usually a small hoop, and that usually is just absolutely ideal. But we'll see as I go for more challenging, larger, more intricate samplers. Just have to work to get the right tools and the right setting. If you have the right tools and the right setting in whatever you're doing, then you're going to ultimately end up with a far better job and much less frustration. I do feel with samplers, I'm tempted, what I am tempted to do is to do a video where it's not actually sampler stitching at all. It's or making it the equivalent in narration behind the scenes of climbing Everest. And of course, you know, I mean, climbing Everest, I'm not a climber at all, like both feet on the ground. I do like going in airplanes, but that's about it. But the idea of Everest as your ultimate sampler, and you've got your base camp and your next camp are up the mountainside, and of course you're going to spend a lot of time ahead of that preparing and getting your equipment and this sort of thing. And here in Scotland we do have some mountains and some hills, and there is a section of the community who absolutely love climbing, and they come from other parts, not just Scotland, to climb some of the hills here and some of the mountains. And I am Highland, Scottish Highland, and not that I grew up in the Highlands, I didn't, but Highlanders evidently never climbed mountains. They just like being in the valley, so that's quite interesting. But I love looking at mountains. And here in Scotland we have them labelled. The higher ones are Munros, and the lower ones are Corbetts. And I should actually show you, I've got a book, you can buy the book, and it's got all the listed and how high they are and where you can reach them and all of this sort of thing. And so I would suggest that at the moment a great many of my samplers are Corbetts, but maybe Anne Grant, this new sampler, is more of a Munro. And I don't know, it'd be interesting to see what you think might be a Mount Everest in samplers. That would be great if you put that in the comments, what you think your Corbett or your Munro, or indeed your Everest, your Mount Everest is for samplers. So there we are with that one. Anne Grant, absolutely loving. Just to start, as I say, but is there anything else I want to say about that? No. Okay, so as you know, if you've watched me before, I bought Merrily Merrily, which is the Blackbird one for the spring. Merrily, merrily, we welcome the spring. Not the spring, just spring. Merrily, merrily, we welcome spring. That's the original. And then that is the adaptation. And I've chosen this, I know who adapted it. Yes, Alma Allen of Blackbird Designs has adapted it, and I've chosen this one because it reminds me colour-wise of the antique sampler that I grew up with in my own home, which hopefully one day, I keep nagging my daughter, who I gave it to please photograph it and send it to me. She lives in France, so anyway, that's another story. So I'm loving this, but I've just started it. So there's just a little bit done on this. And so that's 2 starts, isn't it? Anne Grant and Merrily Merrily. Let me see. I've got the top border done. Oh, or not even the whole thing, actually. Little bit of the alphabet, and then I've come down to here on the border again. The linen is, picture this, plus 36 oaken. And this will not be completed for this spring. No way, not when I have so much else to do. But that's fine. I want to enjoy it. I really don't want to be working under some sort of pressure and feeling obliged to race through everything. I do want to enjoy it. I was a little bit in 2 minds, as you know, about the reds, but I'm going with what Blackbird Designs has suggested, which is raspberry and the baked apple, and really sticking to what they've what they're suggesting. So there we are with that one. Now, I don't know, is it rude to turn on your back when you're doing videos? Hadn't thought of that. Well, I hope you don't find it is. If you do find that off-putting, that I turn my back, please let me know, and I will rearrange the setup here for the filming. Maybe I should have my table here, something like that. Now, for someone who wasn't going to buy anything more, and I know Nashville Market is, I think it's on right now, but I saw this again, Brenda and the Cereal Starter. I've been following, going back to some of their previous videos. Just actually, I worked right from the beginning, and I think I've got to number 23. And they showed this. I said, I absolutely have to buy this. So this is the Scarlet House, Charlotte Frost. Is there a date with it? Yes, Charlotte Frost, 1846. And I'm just going to take this out for you. There's something about this that I think, and I know Sandra has said this, the Cereal Starter, she said, I think this must be the most perfect sampler. And I think I have to agree. And there are so many hundreds out there. And if you've listened to some of my earlier broadcasts, you'll know that I went to Whitney Antiques in Whitney, in Oxfordshire, quite a number of years ago now. In fact, before the lady who's running Hands Across the Sea, and it was slightly inadvertent. I was staying with my daughter, and I just happened to mention to my other daughter who does stitch, and she said, "Oh, but you must go to Whitney Antiques," and that was an absolutely wonderful day. The gentleman who took me around the shop, it's more of a showroom, was just absolutely lovely. He was so helpful, and it was just an emporium of amazingness, treasure. Anyway, let's get back on track. Yes, the model for Charlotte's Sweet Pastoral Sampler was stitched on 36 count corn tassel linen with NPI silk. And one of the reasons that I went ahead and got this, purchased this, was because I could obtain corn tassel, 37 count corn tassel linen. I thought, no, I can get the linen, so no, this is something I really have to have in my library. It's so balanced. There's something just spatially delightful about this. Everything is in proportion, and there's a calmness to it. There are two butterflies, the sheep. I love the sheep. I have another sheep sampler, and I will be doing that, and I might have a little collection of sheep samplers on one of my walls eventually. Just love it. And again, this will be one NPI silk or DMC. Possibly do this with DMC, to tell you the truth. Be sensible about it. Now, plans for March. Well, I have my lovely book of days. Really enjoying this. Still actually managing to fill it in. That was for February. And my aims for March. And we're already at the 4th, as we know. In February, I completed Antique 1861, by Blackbird Designs, and also the Rose Hips and Ivy. So I do feel a sense of accomplishment about February. And I started the blue alphabet. I completed my own design. It was called Thankful. I think it was Thankful, Grateful, Blessed. And I did a little bit of Come Into My Garden. And what else did I do? A little bit of the Anne Grant. I did the one that is an adaptation from Blackbird Designs that I'm calling Give Your Best, but you'll see that later in the year, I think. And I started the King of Love. So a busy month. This month, bit of discipline. I'm definitely going to continue the King of Love, because as I say, that is for aiming for to be completed by Easter. The blue alphabet, yes, continue with the thread in the morning, and I really should have that finished by the end of March. And now, what about the serious ones? Well, the serious ones are Merrily, Merrily, We Welcome Spring. Definitely continuing with that. Aim to have about half of the border done. Might have more of that done. And Come Into My Garden is the other big one. And potentially some more certainly of Come Into My Garden. This is my favourite. This is my absolute favourite. I love this sampler. Absolutely love it. It's what can one say? It's so beautiful. Look at those colours. And an amazing design, just with these lovely loopy corners. So, Blackbird Designs, Come Into My Garden. A great many have done it already, and I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. So Come Into My Garden, Merrily, Merrily, We Welcome the Spring, King of Love, blue alphabet, and there's one other that I aim to be stitching a little bit of in March, and that is Rose Cottage Pin Keep by Stacey Nash, because I don't want to leave it behind. Now I'm finding it pretty intensive, so I'm only aiming to do a little bit of it this March. I've turned again, haven't I? This March. Here we are. It was one of these ones that just kept jumping out at me and jumping out at me and jumping out at me. This is the first Stacey Nash I have ever stitched, and I do intend to complete it. Now, it's actually quite large. It's going to be quite large. I have done the house. I wanted to get up and at least finish the house. And my aim for March is to complete the blue. Which has, I think it's doves on the bottom there. I think it's doves. They could, however, be ducks in the water. Not sure. Birds of some type. I'm not doing the dogs because I'm not a dog person. As you probably remember, I've got the owner of a wonderful ginger pussycat, part Maine Coon, called Casper. He may well feature in this if I'm going to put any animals in at all. And I think I'm using, yes, DMC thread. And it's 8 3/4 by 8 inches. So it's really quite large. And those are my plans. Those are my plans. Now, The other thing I want to talk just a little bit before we go, going back to this idea of being prepared, base camp before you start ascending the mountain. And I am very much still learning. I've only been stitching samplers for just a year's few. I was taught embroidery at school, and I have a very interesting sort of history to that. I'll come round to that again at some point. I have spoken about that before, and I do have a very interesting story about one of my ancestors, but I won't go into that at the moment. I'll keep you posted about that. But I'm finding, looking at those wonderful ladies who are already on Flosstube, who have had years, decades of experience of stitching with samplers, that they are very organized with their threads and with the linens and with the charts. I'm still, as you can possibly realize, rather all over the place with everything and still learning. I'm so busy stitching samplers themselves that I haven't yet got round to sewing these lovely pouches that so many of you have been making. I can't remember, I call them pouches, I can't remember what you call them, but they're textile and they're great. I think they're a lovely idea, but they're quite a lot of work, and as I say, so much I just want to be stitching samplers. And my cat is very well behaved, and I don't have any children, so I can leave things out a bit. I have the luxury of that. But what I'm finding is irritating, if you like, is all these little bits of ends of threads. And so I bought a little dish. I don't have it here, just now I have it in the other room, which you've probably seen again in some of my photographs and videos. It's a lovely little china dish, and I just put the ends of the threads into the dish, and then I dispose of them once I've gathered them a bit. It also keeps the little thread ends tidy, so they're not all over the house or all over me. And so I've resolved that problem. And I love to use sushi boxes, which look like shaker boxes, for my threads. Here's one here. They're actually in 2 compartments and a lid, and I just love these. They stack. Just love them. And I'm sure if I could, I would be getting shaker boxes, but these are a very good alternative. And I put the threads for each of the charts into a different box compartment to keep them all separated, and then I do label these on the side with a little sticker, and that keeps a certain amount of organization. But when I am stitching, I'm finding, okay, and it may be the Scots person within me, but I'll have finished a particular stretch of stitches and there'll still be stacks of thread on my needle. Excuse me. And so I don't just want to throw that away because I know I can use it again. So I'm devising, and as I say, I'm just learning, and this may not work, but I'm devising the idea of having a needle case for each of the charts that I'm working with. And as you can see, I'm working with 6 for this month. Excuse me. And so my idea is to have a little needle case, and have the number of needles in that particular needle case for that particular chart. For example, if we just take the Stacey Nash 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 different colours here of thread, and I will have 8 needles and keep each needle for each thread colour in order. So in order here, the threads are 730, this is DMC, 730, 169 3781. So I'll have 730 169 coming down, so 6 here and 6 here. Is it 6 degrees out? It was 8. 4 and 4, and try and keep them in order, so that, for example, if I have a thread that sort of length, I can come back and use that again. Now, perhaps, and I've made this one today actually. I am making these. I love making them. I'm going to put up a little video of how I've done this. It's really very simple. It's very, very simple, but just rather nice to have. And my aim is to have a needle case for every chart that I'm working on, with the pertaining threads in that needle case, and possibly keeping it with the threads. The threads will be here as well in the little box. We'll see how that goes. We'll see how it goes. And I think having a sense of order is very, very satisfying. And also I think the final product is better if we have order and method in the way that we approach stitching. Now, I'd love to hear from others who have been stitching, what your ideas are. Do you have any hints and tips about how to keep order in your sewing method? That would be great to know. And I think that's it for today. Look out for my little how to make a needle case. I'll put that film up in a couple of days, maybe tomorrow, and I hope to see you. I might be here next week. Let's see how we go. Have a great time stitching. Hope you're inspired. Please like, please subscribe. Thank you for all the new subscribers. Thank you for people who are now becoming regulars. It's great. It's a lovely community. Happy stitching. Bye-bye.